Welcome to Effervescent. Today we are talking about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. But we're starting with Kinley and some breath before we start.
Okay, so no matter where you are, if you're driving or on a walk, just take a moment. Even if you're cooking dinner, you can still be moving through this, but take a breath. We're already breathing. Let's take a breath. Good. And now we're going to take a little bit deeper breath. Try to widen your rib cage with the inhale. Then let it go. And this time you're going to take the biggest breath you've taken all day. Expand your whole body deep into the belly and then open mouth exhale. Let it go.
I love starting like that. Thank you, Kinley.
Same.
I don't realize how fast my mind is going until I start breathing, and you help me bring awareness to that. So I love it. Today is one of my favorite topics that I get to lead, and we'll be taking turns leading different topics depending on the week. But growth mindset versus fixed mindset is something, in my opinion, that can change your reality, can change your world and how you show up every single day. And one thing that I think that sometimes we forget is we feel like the earth kind of, or people around us and community around us, has all this input coming into our minds every single day, and we react to it. It's kind of our natural reaction to react. But if we take what happens and we reframe it and we tell ourselves what that means in a way that is more productive, or growth mindset, versus, that was a horrible thing and this is why, versus fixed mindset, it can really make a big difference. So I want to hear first from both of you. Do you have an experience where you could share that you've experienced growth versus fixed mindset?
I do, right off the bat. Okay. I got some news yesterday, and my brain, it was that like big, I have bad news call. And in that moment, I have trained my body to take a breath. Like, I've had enough. I have bad news, or this is bad news calls, that I like know in that moment, pause and just start breathing. And so I started taking a breath, and then I got the news. And then I feel like all the times that I've had that like, oh no, news in my life, there's this liminal space, this moment where it's like I'm floating. I'm like, okay, do I want to choose a growth mindset, or do I want to choose a victim mindset? And even though those aren't the words that go through my head, it's very much like, how do I want to handle this? Do I want to lose my cool, or do I want to see like how this is helping me become a better person? So, yeah.
I love that you use the word liminal. When I first learned that word, it was only probably like 8 years ago, I remember thinking, what is that? And it's a word in psychology that is studied. I'd never heard of it. And for those of you that haven't heard of liminal space, it's a place where you're not where you were and you're not where you're going. It's that moment in between. And what you spoke to is, I can slow down that transition and make that choice. That's a perfect place to say, choose the growth mindset in the liminal space and slow that down. I love that.
It takes awareness, and I'm not saying I chose the right thing, right or wrong. It's not even real, but
cool.
I'm not saying I chose the growth mindset. I'm just saying was when I had the opportunity to
Yeah,
decide.
I'd never applied those two together.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Yeah, Brighton, can you think
Me?
of something? Yeah.
No, I'm sure I have something, but I didn't have like something pop up right when you said that. I think no matter what, every single day, like there's tiny little things that I'm like, oh, I'm kind of operating in fear, or like lack of abundance, or, can I do more? So even in terms of like, this is gonna be pretty like funny, but like content creation, podcasting, anything that you're wanting to do that maybe it seems like there's a lot of people in that space, it's like, okay, am I going to tell myself it's too saturated, tell myself I don't have what it takes, tell myself that everyone has got it covered and I have nothing to add to this space, or tell myself, no, I firmly believe that I have like a voice in this and I have something important to say, and there's space for me here, and I do think, yeah, even in entrepreneurship and like anything like that, there's both. So I think that's where I've been almost struggling, is like, yeah, like the fixed mindset of just, but struggling, I guess we're here and we're doing it. So maybe I'm not struggling as much as I'm saying, but that's where my brain went.
I feel like one gives away your power and one holds you in your power.
Yeah.
Where like when it's like, this always happens to me, or why again do I have to go through this? You know, like that's more the victim mindset of somebody else is doing this to me and woe is me. And although like, yes, you probably have been the victim in a scenario, that's a very real thing.
Yeah.
But it's what you do with that, you know, where the growth is more, okay, that happened, but I'm going to actually take that power back. Because I heard this quote a week ago and I'm obsessed with it. It says, no one can take your power unless you give it to them.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a good point. And Brighton, I loved how you said victim mindset. That's another way, a great way of saying that. And Brighton, I love how you related creation with growth versus fixed mindset, because how often do we, no matter what industry you're in or whatever you create every single day, you can look around and say, oh, all these people already are writers, or they're all teachers, or they're all this or that. And it's a way of limiting ourselves in comparison. And that is a very common fixed mindset versus, you know, I am an individual and my experiences are going to be unique, and sky is the limit. Yeah, I can just shoot for the stars. It's a really cool way of thinking about that.
I have this thought that I really want to share, but I can't find it yet. So I'm going to look at it, but it's really good. So keep going.
Yeah, I mean, it also reminds me of, you guys know, in our house, I've had a block of wood. It's, I think, the only saying I've had in my house ever and for always, like at least almost 20 years. And it says, attitude is everything. Pick a good one. And attitude, I know, is it's more the reaction to a situation, but attitude, and I think growth versus fixed mindset is very similar. What do you think about that?
I mean, I agree. I see things through energy. So I'm like, what is the energy I'm putting into this? Is the energy I'm putting into this more low vibrational, of like more of a contracting energy? Then that's not going to create an attitude that feels good, right? Where if I'm feeling more like abundant or grateful and I'm in that energy, then I'm going to probably pick an attitude that feels happier or more enjoyable.
Yeah, so a side street, how do you raise gratitude? This could be a whole episode or itself, but quickly, what's one tip for raising gratitude so you stay more in your growth or positive energy mindset?
I love that. There's this, like, what I'm referring to without saying is there's this chart that you can Google called energy. You could Google like the frequencies of emotions.
Oh yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah, and it shows you what emotion, like shame is at the very bottom. And shame is like such a low frequency, such a low, heavy feeling, where bliss is like at the top, or gratitude, like those higher, more expansive emotions are super, the like energy, it will show that the wavelengths look different than the ones in shame. And so one of my ways to rise up on it, and I used to actually keep it on my phone as my background because I wanted to check in every time I checked my phone. Yeah, I was like, okay, what energy am I living in? Because that's creating my reality. And it just brought that awareness. But if I find myself in a lower one, I try just to step up one, kind of like that 2% effort thing. Like, just try to get, if I'm in shame, try to get into, not that getting into fear is going to help, but what I'm saying
higher.
Is like, let's do one little thing that's going to help. And how I do it, my tip is I pay attention to my body. And I pay attention to what feels expansive to me and what feels more contracting. So if I am feeling a lot of shame, maybe sitting in the shame is still feeling contracting. And so if getting up and going on a walk is going to help me feel a little more lighter, then I'll do that.
Yeah.
Did you find your quote? I love that, Kinley. Thank you.
I did, and I'm like, oh, maybe it doesn't tie in as much as I thought, but it's really, I'm trying to make it make sense because I think it does tie in. So we're talking about growth versus fixed mindset. And in a way, I kind of view that as like having faith in whatever. So like I basically saw, do you know Bashar? He's like a spiritual teacher. Randomly, like he came up on my For You page, but he speaks some truth. Like he's amazing. He's really awesome. And basically he was talking about how you are always having faith. You are either having faith in your doubts or having faith in your like abundance
I
and
love
gratitude. So it's not like you need to find more self-confidence, more faith, more whatever. It's like, well, I guess not self-confidence, but like you are having the confidence that you're not going to succeed, or you're having the confidence that you are going to succeed. And so I was like writing about it in my quote, which I'm literally talking about my own quote that I wrote, but I'm like, it's true.
Go for it.
I was like, I hope there comes a day when you trust your dreams more than you trust your fears, because both are real, but only one will get you to where you want to go.
That absolutely applies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, faith and growth. It's expansion
Yeah.
versus contraction, like Kinley was saying.
So it really is like growth versus fixed, but even in terms of, believing in yourself, faith, whatever you want to like call it. But yeah, that was a thought.
Yeah.
It's not really a tip, but
Absolutely is a tip. As far as tips, that's actually where I was thinking to go next. And I know that the three of us talk about this next topic a lot, so it's not going to be new to either of you, but something that each of us talk about in our own way with body, mind, soul is writing in a journal or a diary, whether it's locked online so nobody can read it, or you write it and you burn it, or you don't care if somebody reads it. But writing every day, if you can, where your mindset is, where your thoughts are. And the more often you do that, the more aware you become of what you're saying to yourself over and over and over in your mind. And when you have awareness, and then when you have awareness of what you're saying to yourself, then you're able to adjust things so that your neural pathways in your mind are a more growth mindset versus a fixed mindset.
Yeah, I feel like when I journal, because I do journal, and I feel like it's brought awareness to even when I'm writing a sentence, I'm like, do I really want to write this? And I kind of slow down my writing of like, I am, and it's like, okay, do I want to finish what I was thinking?
yeah.
Or it like slows it down, or do I want to rephrase that to be like, I am trying to be better?
There's
whatever.
power in both, right? There's power to hear
Yeah.
all the crap,
Yeah.
and just be like, oh man, I'm just here, I'm saying it, and maybe I don't want to stay here, but to recognize there's power in that. And then there's power to be like, how might I want to shift that when I'm saying that to myself? 80% of what I said yesterday is today and tomorrow, or more than 80%. I'd have to look at the exact data, but do I want to shift that? And so both are good. What are you going to say, Brighton?
I have a thought. And I think it comes with especially like my stage of life, but probably a lot of people's stages of lives. Being around people that either have a growth versus fixed mindset is something I've really noticed being in like my mid 20s now. I really am gravitating, towards people that have a growth mindset, and I actually can't be around people. I mean, I can, but it's hard to really grow and become like close to people that have a fixed mindset. How do you deal with something like that?
And I wish it had to do with age. Like,
Yeah.
when we were young, we were fixed and we got better and better. But I can tell you, I know 80-plus-year-olds that have a very fixed mindset and 20-year-olds that have a growth mindset, or vice versa. It's a choice. And what's cool about that is we're not born with the ability to be one way or the other. We're born with the choice to practice one or the other.
Yeah, I'm like listening to you because I actually talked about this on your Girls Night In podcast we did a year ago. And I talked about the rubber band analogy. How like when
Explain it again. It's really good.
when I started to heal and grow, I noticed that like the people that I was closest with, I just started not like, I would just notice more of like, wait, this is kind of feeling heavier, or like I want to talk about this, and every time I do, they like fall asleep. Like they're not into it. And bless them, I still love them, But it was like, oh, I just want to expand and grow, and there's this like tension feeling where at first there was no tension. It was just like,
Yeah.
we're just hanging out. And then it started to create like a rubber band where it started to create tension, and it was like, do I want to keep growing? There's this thing that like I want to be around them, I want to hang out with them. And I feel like I want to also be expanding at the same time. And there's a moment when it's like, are you going to let the rubber band snap you back? Or are you going to let the rubber band break? And it's not that you might you might not keep those people in your life, but you also might. It just looks different, you know?
Yeah.
But to what you're saying, I think it's also something to celebrate. Like, it's easy to focus on the sadness of people around us not being on the same wavelength or in the same expansion mind or growth mindset. And at the same time, that's something to look at yourself, that mirror, and be like, oh, look, I'm growing. Oh,
Yeah.
look, I'm not where I was. I didn't even notice that before. Like,
And that's okay. And you changed. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. That's just where my mind went.
I have a thought.
Mm-hmm.
So what if you are with people that you don't want to let go of? How do you have a growth mindset when you are around people that are in a, what is it, fixed mindset?
Yeah.
What do you do?
I mean, that's the first reason I wanted to learn about grounding. This was almost 20 years ago, too. I remember looking online when the internet was pretty new and saying, what is grounding? Because I had heard of it and I felt like it was something I needed to understand, but I didn't know why. And when I started realizing what grounding was, in that I have my own energy, I'm my person, and then I'm around somebody else that has their energy in their person. And if I'm feeling drained or whatever in that situation, I have the choice to ground myself. I didn't know what that was at the time, but to breathe and to focus on what's theirs and what's mine. I'm saying it in the most simple terms. And then to let go of the energy that's not mine so that I could control how I'm feeling and not base my attitude and my emotions on the people around me. I know that you teach this all the time, but that was the very first real hard lesson I had about what is grounding, it's a choice, it's a boundary that we can set, that if this is not how I want to feel, if this is not how I want to be, I can choose it. And then at that point you have a choice where, as you mentioned, okay, I want to stay, I don't want to leave this friendship, but I want to be careful. I think it is about boundaries. Like, how much can I spend in this situation and have it not affect me? And that might come back down to writing and seeing where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and boundaries, I love when I've heard the quote that says boundaries are to keep people in your life, not push people out.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's very much what you're saying of like, and boundaries are not controlling another person, they're controlling yourself. So it's like, okay, I do value having this person in my life, and I also value having a growth mindset. And so how can I have both? And that's the boundary, and it's all in your control.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brighton, what were you going to say?
Your answer.
No, I don't know. I was genuinely just listening.
Yeah.
I have
What was
nothing.
my question again? Oh, when someone in your life is in a fixed mindset and you're in a growth mindset, like how to deal with it, how to keep both. I do love the boundaries. Do you have a thought?
I think boundaries I think it's all to do with like knowing yourself and knowing when it's time to let go and knowing when it's time to also work for that relationship. But have you guys ever heard of like the lonely chapter? It's like kind of a thing that's been on like a lot of, I don't know, socials, but it just talks about this stage of life of like there can be chapters in your life where you're lonely because you are not where you want to be and with the crowd that you know is for you, but you have left the crowd and the people that you know aren't for you. And so then you're on this like lonely road to self-discovery until you find those people. And I believe that it's like cyclical probably, you probably have multiple lonely chapters as, when you learn and grow and change, but
it's a liminal space.
Liminal
totally
space.
is.
That's really what you're describing is a liminal space. I love that. So how can we apply this now to holistic wellness, which is what the focus of our podcast is, mind, body, spirit, ways of maybe, taking care of ourselves, whether it's through food or movement or how can we apply growth versus fixed mindset? And I'll just throw one out to start. Reframing how you're feeling when you're ready to go try to start a new exercise routine. Okay, I'm gearing up right now to try to lift weights with Brighton and to learn and to feel comfortable. And my fixed mindset is I hate the gym. And not that you have to lift weights at the gym, but just in general, like Brighton does, I don't. And I would like to learn from her. So my fixed mindset is I don't like going to the local college gym or whatever. It's not my jam. I'd rather run into the mountains and throw rocks. I've done that before. Or squat with holding rocks. That's kind of more my thing.
Also, let's tell the audience that my mom hiked up with dumbbells, put them in a bush in the mountains, and she hikes up to her bush and uses the dumbbells.
Totally. So like that's my jam. It's not the gym. So my fixed mindset is I don't go to the gym. I don't like the gym. It's not like my place. Okay, growth. But there's things I want there. So here I am. Okay, what's the growth mindset? The growth mindset is I believe if I can get there, I will have awesome experiences.
Yeah.
And I will become better and more comfortable as I push myself to go in an uncomfortable place.
So true.
Okay, so let's hear from you, like one of your fix that you're working on transitioning.
Personally working on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, you can go.
With health and what with our holistic health
I know, I'm trying
focus.
to think personally working on.
Well, okay, so this is what I'm currently working on. I hope this is the answer to the question.
No right or wrong.
I am working on, I've observed my fixed mindset and when I journal. And even when I talk to my friends, and luckily I do have a tribe of people that are like, you just said I can't again. You know, like they kind of point out my words, which is a whole nother subject. Like find your tribe, and if you don't have it yet and you're in that lonely place, like it's still coming. Hold that vision. And so I've become very aware of my limited way I talk about myself and what I can do and how I can grow. And so I have started the subconscious mind. I've been learning about manifestation, and she says to say, like, you can't just say, oh, I can have, say, okay, let's say like $1 million. I can't have $1 million. And she says, you can't just say I can have $1 million or I will have $1 million because the part of your brain that doesn't believe it is firing, saying, no, you won't. And it's like, that doesn't really manifest it, but, or call it in or help you create it. But what you do is you reframe, like, I am becoming the person that would easily or know how to create something to make $1 million, and reframing it into a way that's like, you touch that part of your brain that would normally say no and be like, oh, well, yeah, that does make sense. I could get on board with that. And it lights that up. And then it helps rewire the neural pathways to believe that it's possible. So it's not a specific one, but that has been what I've been doing. Like my tip is, instead of writing, I can't do this, I've been trying to be conscious about, I am becoming the person that would easily attract this, like reframing the sentence.
Yeah, super cool. And something that's cool with performance psychology is that if you're the one that decides that and sets your intention, you're way more likely to make that happen versus, say, a coach saying, you know, I really think it would be great if you could X, Y, and Z. Your natural reaction is going to be like, well, you don't know because you don't know my schedule, or you don't know why I can or can't. You go in defense mode versus me as a coach saying, okay, Kinley, like, how do you think you could, you know, and make $1 million? And then you're going to come up with ideas and set those intentions or goals, and you're much more likely to achieve them, which is amazing.
Yeah, it makes sense because like you have to come up with it. It's not just told to you.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, Brighton.
So I had an example for kind of what you're talking about with exercise and stuff, more like in an audience, like the listener to think about if this is something they're struggling with. But then I also have like my thought on something I'm struggling with. So kind of when you were talking about the exercise, this is another one that's I'm still reframing, but I feel like I've had a good grasp, is everything to do with food. So usually the fixed mindset with food is, I mean, there's a lot, like there's a lot, but in terms of I can never change, I only care about how it tastes, or like I either have to do all or nothing diets and all or nothing crash, whatever. I feel like the growth mindset that I've stepped into is like, no, the way I eat is self-care and it's fuel. So instead of like all or nothing restricting and whatever, and it's so like fixed on like this is how it needs to, good, bad food, and yeah, exactly. the thing with food that I've really helped me, especially when it comes to like running and stuff, they teach you like, no, food is fuel. Like you just need to choose the foods to like help you fuel your life, and that seems so much more abundant and like exciting. And it like naturally has me choosing and thinking about foods because it's exciting. Like because I'm like, oh, that's gonna help me fuel for like my next hard workout, or like to look or and feel the way I want to do type of thing. So that was one in terms of like the listener. But one I'm struggling with, which is so funny because I'm like, I don't want to say I'm struggling with it because then I'm like, but it was kind of the same thing you were saying. A lot of when I wrote in my journal for the past however long, and my mom actually pointed this out when you were like coaching me. I went back and like reviewed my journal because I was like, okay, what are the things? And the main thing that I still kind of do and talk about is I feel lost. I feel lost. What am I doing? Like, how do I do this? I reframe it, I research it, or I change my schedule, or like, I keep feeling lost. And then I like finally am realizing in especially the field that I'm trying to do, like anything to do with creativity, and there's not like a tried and true path, okay? It's like there's not school for this long and then you get a job for this long, and like there's a path. It's like what we are all doing is so unknown. Like that is the nature of it. I realized like, oh, maybe I feel lost, but maybe that's how I'm supposed to feel. Like, you know what I'm saying? And maybe I'm not exactly lost. It's just I'm always going to be recreating the life that I'm creating because it's so fluid in that way, because I'm not going on like a tried and true path.
Love it. You're a trailblazer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would much rather live on a path of exploration
Me too.
than a well-traveled. I mean, everybody feels comfortable in different ways. Yeah. So I guess it's finding the way that we feel comfortable going forward and creating. It's really cool.
I also heard, because my go-to sentence, I have two. I've had two in the past that are, it's hard. I say, yeah, it's hard. And I just say that about a lot of things. And then the other one has been, I'm overwhelmed. And that keeps me stuck because I'm constantly saying, I'm overwhelmed. And it's like that like functional freeze. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I want to reframe that sentence. And my coach said to me, overwhelm is a choice. And he's very blunt. And I'm very emotional, but I need the blunt. And I was very grateful that he's like, overwhelm is a choice. Lost is a choice.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like,
okay. Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you talk about neural pathways and mindset and self-talk's another whole focus that we'll talk about later. But, if you say the same thing in your mind, and it's like, I've talked about this with you before in the Mindscape, coaching that we're doing, but if you imagine a spring coming out of the mountain, it's this tiny little trickle that's coming out of a natural spring in the mountain. And as it goes down and there's tributaries, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's how our mindset is and self-talk, where maybe we have this little thought and we think, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, or I'm overwhelmed. Okay. You think, oh, I'm tired, or you keep adding, tributaries of thought keep coming in, confirmation bias to prove that you're right, that you're overwhelmed. And you see something else and I'm overwhelmed. Yeah, I am really overwhelmed. And the river gets bigger and bigger. It turns into this raging river of thought process.
Even
if we
with
let
the
it.
victim mindset.
Yeah, with anything.
Of like, this always happens to me. And then you find
bias. This always happens. Yeah.
It can be anything. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, but here we go. Awareness. If you recognize it, like you just said you did, awesome coach to, point that out. It's a choice. Then you start, when you start setting up dams in the river and diverting and saying maybe this, switching it to a growth mindset. And
how do you do that? How do you set up a dam?
Grounding. I feel like it's
I love that answer. Yeah.
Present to yourself and be like, okay, right now I'm telling myself this. Like becoming aware. Grounding, there's a direct correlation between being grounded and being disciplined in your mind. Like you can become aware of your thoughts only when you're grounded.
Yeah.
Like you can start putting those stop signs up only when you're present. It's not something you can do in the past.
Yeah.
And you can't really do it in the future, but you can do it in the present.
Is there any studies on like what people have tried to do on like patience, or you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know.
Sure, there's a million.
I guess thoughts are like hard to even study, but
Well, we like have the same repetitive thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why the journaling is so powerful, because it's like, and people don't want to do it, or they're like, I'm not a writer or whatever. Nobody even has to see it, but
Yeah.
it's one of the fastest ways I know to recognize what's happening and to shift it. I think it's cool when you have feedback, like whether it's a coach or a counselor or good friends that say, hey, you know, I've noticed that this is happening. Why do you keep saying that? Or what do you think about that, in a kind way?
Yeah.
You know, I think is another way. Honestly, I want to think about it more, because I know there's a lot of research about how to shift and change. And it's one of the biggest reasons I chose to go into performance psychology, because I am a little bit obsessed with, what are those things we can do?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
What about you, Brighton? I know you asked the question, but what are ways that you've shifted? Because I've seen you do it.
Yeah, I mean, I am an avid journaler for sure. I wish I had like pictures I could show. Like my journals are thick, and I get them thick for a reason, because I love journaling. I will do voice memos sometimes, or
To help with what? Sorry, I kind of missed the question.
to help with, like, it's like you called it building the dam. How do you build the
Changing the
dam
mindset.
to change your mindset? I do this normally, and I don't like that I do this, okay? And I keep doing it. If once I can do something different, once, and I can, like, feel how that feels, and then, like, kind of like that feeling more, then I feel like that helps me shift to change. Does that make any sense? Maybe that doesn't make sense.
Well,
I don't know.
it's like the 2% effort, or the proof that like,
The
okay, I've
proof.
done
It's
it
the
once.
proof.
I've
Yeah.
done it once, I can do it again.
Yeah.
And I think that also, like, a lot of us who have a growth mindset are like, okay, well, I got to put a huge dam up right away. And it's like, it doesn't work like that. Dams take one rock at a time. And so
point.
one little change in one moment, not like, say you're with someone and this isn't health, but I guess it is health. Like, you're deciding to get divorced or not. It's not like you just jump and get divorced. Like, you have to do the little things to be like, okay, I went out and got groceries by myself today. Okay, I can stand on my own. And like, you have to build step by step to then believe, like, okay, I can really do this big thing.
Yeah, and it goes with the whole idea that, you know, there isn't negative emotions. Emotions are emotions. And so letting yourself feel that can be motivation. So I get in the trap of like, whoa, put up the dam, you know, like I need to change it to kind of what you're saying, to growth mindset, but then I'm not letting myself feel the emotion and what I can learn from that emotion.
That is kind of growth mindset. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, maybe that is feeling the emotion and moving through the emotion, and then having the awareness, because it's almost like abundance of, oh, I know I can feel through this, and then heal and continue. And heal is like a, you know, whether you heal or whatever it is to you, but
I think, sorry, were you going to
No,
say
go ahead.
something? No, I believe it takes creating space too, like within yourself, pausing long enough, which is also grounding, but like slowing the mind down and just sitting with yourself to see, like, am I letting myself feel the feelings, or what thoughts are taking over? And like creating space really does help you see more clearly.
Yeah, I think it's something that I would like to actually ask the listeners. You know, I think there's a lot of ways to change mindset and self-talk. And so maybe later when people are listening to this, to write in the comments, this is how I do it. This is how I do it.
I would love to hear
I would love to hear that.
Yeah.
So
DM us.
I would love to hear that, because it's one of those things that people do so differently depending on who you are. Sometimes for me, it's just music. I know that music shifts my mindset faster than a lot of things, or movement, you know, it changes my energy and my emotion, and then I'm able to change my mindset. So if I need a fast fix, I'm like, turn on a song that gets me going.
Yeah.
That's like, wait, this is the mindset I want.
Yeah.
This is how I want to feel. I'm going to live in this space and shift fast.
Even listening to a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I always do. It's
Yeah.
like if I'm in a lull, I'm like, I just need to hear someone else who's not in a lull.
Yeah.
And it does like
Mm.
help me sit up and like feel more alive.
I'm thinking about the listener too, and I'm like, I've done this multiple times in my journal, but yeah, maybe send us and or write down one of what exactly the practice we just did. One of your limiting beliefs, one of your fixed mindset things that you do, and then try and reframe it. Or if you don't know how to reframe it, send it to us.
Yeah,
and
we can
maybe we can help reframe it for you.
Yeah, that's a great way to wrap up. And I think for me, I have to think of easy ways to remember things that are important to me. So I quick tried to put some of these tips in an acronym, and I did MAP. So the first one is M, mindset reframing. So we talked about that. How do we reframe what's happening into a way that's a growth mindset way of looking at it? A is assigning daily practice. So journaling or a way to recognize and be aware of ways that you're having a fixed mindset. And then P of the MAP is pushing beyond your comfort. And in the research that I found for today, and Kinley, you brought it up, you said a 2% effort shift. In the research I found, it doesn't even matter, but it said a 5 to 10% shift of how can I push myself each day to think differently and having it be more like a conscious decision. All of these things have fit into this, but there's a million ways to shift our mindset. So yeah, thank you for adding to the conversation, and the people listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
We also have a freebie.
I was just
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
please, Kinley, give us a freebie.
I want you guys to both share a book that's helped you shift your mindset.
Good. Let's see. A Big Leap is the first thing that I'm going to say.
The Big
The
Leap.
Big Leap.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. The Big Leap. And it's a good one that helped
so
me
good.
shift my mindset. Yes.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. And, like,
There is, but you only get to pick one, and then you're going to share
Well, I
the
asked the
freebie.
question, but I didn't think. Okay. Shift my mindset. I love the book, The Power of Now. I've talked a lot about grounding in this
Yeah.
episode, and The Power of Now is not, it's a deep book. It's short, but I like to just read one little passage and then just like sit with it and then read the next one when I like have really absorbed what the first one meant. So The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yes.
Yeah.
He has another one. What is it called? The Untethered Soul.
Oh, did he write that? No, someone else wrote that.
Okay. Well, The Untethered Soul, that's one that actually really, really helped me get out of anxiety, which I think spinning thoughts were the cause of my anxiety, you know? And I think thinking back to it, I used to be really afraid of getting on planes and flying. And I listened to that book on the plane. And yeah, I think I could say like 15 others, but I'm actually happy because that reminded me of that book. So yeah, that book's great.
I love that book too. That actually crossed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I have another. Joe Dispenza. Anything Joe Dispenza is very
Yeah,
much
he's great.
like he shows the research behind like how you can actually change your mind and your neural pathways and just so many cool things. All that being said, you want to tell them what we have?
You tell him.
Okay. I've been talking a lot in this episode.
That's fine, yeah.
We have a freebie, and it's a book list of all of our favorite books that you need to be reading in this upcoming year or in the next year. And we've written them all down, and we're just going to post a link probably in the show notes under this episode.
Yep.
Where you can just click it, and then you can
Get
get
the
there's
list.
like 20. There's like a ton.
And we're just starting. That was, we literally for like 15 minutes, we're all writing like book titles.
And they're
we
all
keep thinking-
so good.
Yeah,
These are like the best of the best. So you
Yes.
guys need this list.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next
See you
time.
next time.
Bye.